Every time you rush to defend yourself, you hand over your peace to someone who never deserved it. You think explaining yourself will make them understand you. But the truth is, people who want to misunderstand you already decided to. This talk isn't about silence. It's about power. Because the most confident people aren't the loudest, they're the calmest. And today, I'll show you why the best defense is no defense at all. You know what's interesting? The moment someone questions your character, your intentions, or your decisions, our first instinct is to defend, to jump in, to prove, to explain. It's human nature. We want people to understand us. We want to clear the air, make sure they don't think badly of us. But here's the truth you learn the hard way. When you rush to defend yourself, you plant a seed of doubt, not in them, but in you. Because every time you say, "No, that's not what I meant," or "You've got it wrong," what you're really saying underneath is, "Please believe me." You hand your peace over to their approval. You make your calm depend on their agreement. And that's where defensiveness begins to quietly erode your confidence. Think about it. The people who know your heart don't need your explanations. And the ones who want to misunderstand you, they'll twist whatever you say anyway. That's why trying to explain yourself to everyone is like chasing the wind. You'll wear yourself out, and still no one will really hear you. Sometimes, the only way to protect your peace is to stay silent and let time speak for you. When you stop defending yourself, something powerful happens. You start to trust your own truth again. You start realizing that what they think of you isn't the whole story. It's just their perspective, filtered through their own insecurities, fears, or assumptions. Defensiveness keeps you tangled in their perception, but silence pulls you back to your center. You don't need to prove honesty when your actions are consistent. You don't need to explain integrity when your life speaks for itself. People who are grounded don't argue about their character, they live it. And over time, the truth has a way of revealing itself without you having to say a word. Now, I get it. When you're being misunderstood, silence can feel unbearable. It feels like letting the lie win. It feels like weakness. But I want you to remember this silence is not surrender. It's self-control. It's saying, "I trust that the truth doesn't need my panic to survive." Because when you defend yourself too quickly, you lose composure. You give your peace to the very people who are trying to provoke you. You hand them the steering wheel of your emotions. That's what most people don't understand. Defensiveness isn't a response, it's a reaction. It's fear dressed up as righteousness. You're not standing up for yourself, you're standing on quicksand, trying to find balance in someone else's storm. But when you pause, when you breathe before you explain, when you decide, "I don't need to fight for them to see me clearly," that's real strength. And here's what usually happens when you stop defending yourself. The people who were testing you get uncomfortable. They expect you to argue, to justify, to perform. When you don't, their power fades. Because your calmness exposes their noise. Your stillness becomes louder than any defense could ever be. So the next time you feel attacked, judged, or misunderstood, pause before you speak. Ask yourself, am I explaining because it's needed or because I want to be liked? If it's the second one, say less. You don't owe everyone a front row seat to your truth. You don't need to audition for acceptance. The right people will understand without explanation. The wrong ones will never believe you, even if you spend hours trying. So save your energy. Protect your peace. Let your truth breathe on its own. You're not here to convince. You're here to live. Sometimes the strongest statement you can make is silence. Not everyone deserves access to your explanation. That's something most of us learn too late, after we've spent years trying to justify ourselves to people who were never really listening. Some people don't ask questions to understand you. They ask to challenge you, to pull you into their world of chaos and control. And when you start explaining yourself to those people, you're not building understanding, you're building a stage for them to perform on. You see, not every conversation is meant for clarity. Some are traps. Some are designed to drain your peace, to make you question your own truth, to make you feel like you owe them comfort for their misunderstanding. And when you take that bait, when you defend, justify, or over-explain, you open a door that never should have been opened. You give someone else the power to decide how valid your feelings are. You don't owe everyone your emotional energy. You don't owe everyone an explanation for your boundaries, your silence, your growth, or your choices. When someone demands, "Why didn't you call me back?" or "Why are you being distant?" you don't have to give a speech. Because real connections don't come with constant justification. They come with mutual respect. Some people will twist your words no matter how carefully you say them. You could write an essay explaining your intentions, and they'd still find a way to make you the villain. And that's when you have to stop asking yourself, "How can I make them understand?" and start asking, "Why do I feel the need to?" Most of the time, it's not about them, it's about us. We defend because we want to be seen as good, as kind, as worthy. But when you learn to sit in your truth without needing to prove it, that's where real peace begins. You realize your worth doesn't need validation, and your boundaries don't need explanation. When you withhold an explanation, it's not arrogance, it's maturity. It's the quiet confidence that says, "I'm not going to fight to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding me." You can care about people and still choose not to explain yourself to them. You can love them deeply and still protect your peace fiercely. Think about this: when you start explaining too much, you teach people that your peace is negotiable. You teach them that if they push hard enough, you'll give in. That's not communication. That's control dressed as concern. There's a difference between someone who genuinely wants to understand you and someone who just wants to keep you defending yourself. One brings closeness, the other brings exhaustion. You'll notice the difference in how they listen. The ones who deserve your explanation will make space for your words. They'll hear you with patience, but the ones who don't will interrupt, twist, or dismiss you. That's your cue, not to speak louder, but to stop speaking altogether, because your silence in that moment isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Let me tell you something that will free you. Your peace is not a public service. You're allowed to keep parts of yourself private. You're allowed to say, "This isn't up for discussion." You're allowed to walk away from conversations that cost too much energy for too little understanding. Not everyone gets access to your peace, your process, or your explanation, and that's okay. The right people won't demand it. They'll just understand. And the ones who don't, let them wonder. Your peace doesn't need permission to exist. Confidence doesn't always look like speaking up. Sometimes it's the complete opposite. Sometimes it's sitting there, fully aware of what's being said about you and choosing not to respond. Because confidence, real confidence, isn't loud. It doesn't need a crowd to echo its worth. It's quiet. It's steady. It's knowing that what's true doesn't need defending, and what's false doesn't deserve attention. You can always tell the difference between someone who's secure and someone who's desperate for approval. The desperate ones talk too much, explain too much, apologize too much. They need to fill the silence because silence feels like judgment. But the confident ones, they know silence is power. They know that when they stop talking, people start paying attention. There's something magnetic about someone who doesn't rush to explain themselves. It makes others lean in, curious, unsettled even, because silence forces them to reflect. Confidence is the calm after accusation. It's that moment when someone throws words meant to provoke you, and instead of reacting, you breathe. You look at them, you smile, and you let their noise fall flat against your peace. That calm isn't cold, it's controlled. It says, "I see what you're trying to do, and I'm not going to let you pull me into your storm." When you stop defending yourself, you start reclaiming your voice. Because the moment you start justifying, you're no longer speaking your truth. You're tailoring it to fit someone else's approval. But when you hold your ground in silence, when you let your actions carry your message, that's when people begin to understand that your confidence isn't built on opinions. It's built on evidence. It's built on the quiet consistency of your character. You don't need to tell people you're honest when your integrity shows up every day. You don't need to say you're strong when your peace speaks louder than your pain. You don't need to shout to be heard when your presence already changes the atmosphere. Confidence is that silent certainty that doesn't ask for recognition. It earns it naturally through behavior, through stability, through grace under pressure. And here's the thing, when you reach that level of peace, people will misunderstand it. They'll say you're detached, that you don't care, that you're being arrogant. But what they're really feeling is the discomfort of not being able to control your emotions. Your calm makes their chaos louder, your silence exposes their insecurity. And instead of lowering your energy to match theirs, you hold your ground. That's what strength looks like. Not a raised voice, not a long explanation, just stillness, grounded in truth. There's power in walking away without a single word. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Because when you explain yourself to everyone, you're really saying, please see me the way I see myself. But when you stop explaining, you're saying, I already do. That's the shift. That's what separates insecurity from peace. The most confident people aren't the ones constantly trying to prove they're right. They're the ones at ease when someone else thinks they're wrong, because they understand something deeper. Peace doesn't come from being understood, it comes from understanding yourself. So the next time you're tempted to defend yourself, pause. Ask yourself, what am I trying to prove, and to who? If your truth stands solid without their validation, you don't need to say another word. Your silence will say it better than you ever could. Confidence doesn't need an audience. It only needs peace. At some point, you have to stop apologizing for protecting your peace. People will call it coldness. They'll say you've changed. And they're right, you have. You've changed from someone who used to explain every little thing to someone who finally understands that not every situation deserves your energy. That's not cold, that's clarity. Boundaries are one of the most misunderstood forms of love. People think boundaries push others away, but the truth is, boundaries show who's meant to stay. Because when you start saying no, when you stop explaining why you need space, when you choose silence over chaos, people who value you will adjust. People who used you will resist. And that's how you find out who's who. The problem is, many of us were taught that love means constant accessibility, that you should always answer, always explain, always fix. But that's not love, that's exhaustion disguised as kindness. You can care deeply and still not be available for every misunderstanding. You can be kind and still say, this conversation isn't healthy for me. Setting boundaries isn't about shutting people out. It's about staying whole in a world that constantly tries to pull you apart. When you stop defending yourself, you start realizing how much energy you used to spend trying to manage other people's feelings about you. You start seeing how often you confused explanation with connection. But real connection doesn't come from explaining yourself. It comes from being understood without having to, and the people who truly respect you won't make you defend your decisions just to earn their approval. There's a shift that happens when you stop explaining your boundaries. You go from feeling guilty to feeling grounded. At first, it feels strange because silence feels selfish. But with time, you realize that protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's survival. It's emotional discipline. It's understanding that you can't heal in environments that constantly question your worth. And here's something to remember. When you start protecting your peace, the noise around you gets louder. People will test your silence. They'll push against your boundaries, not because they don't understand, but because your growth threatens their comfort. They were used to you explaining, to you chasing, to you making things right. Now you're calm, you're quiet, and you're unmoved, and that unsettles them. But that's the cost of peace. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors with locks. You decide who gets in, how long they stay, and what kind of energy they bring with them. And if that makes someone uncomfortable, that's not your burden to carry. Because here's the truth. If someone gets offended by your peace, they were benefiting from your chaos. The moment you stop defending yourself, you create space for peace to breathe. You begin to notice how freeing it feels to not explain why you didn't respond, or why you didn't attend, or why you simply walked away. You realize you don't owe closure to people who caused confusion, and you don't owe explanations to those who never listened in the first place. And yes, it takes strength, because peace often looks like distance, and boundaries can feel lonely. But that quiet space you're creating, that's where you start hearing yourself again. That's where growth begins. Because peace isn't built in noise, it's built in moments when you choose not to engage, not to explain, not to defend. So if they say you've changed, let them talk. If they call you distant, let them wonder. You're not becoming colder, you're becoming clearer. And clarity always feels like distance to those who benefited from your confusion. Protecting your peace isn't rejection, it's respect for yourself. When you stop defending yourself, you give your energy a new job. Instead of wasting it on trying to convince people who don't want to understand you, you start using it to build something that actually proves your truth, your life. There's a quiet power in letting your results speak for you, because no matter how many times you explain yourself, words can only go so far. But consistency, that never lies. You can argue with someone all day long about who you are, but when your actions stay steady, when your peace stays intact, when your progress continues, eventually the truth makes its own noise. You don't need to shout it. You don't need to post about it. Just keep showing up, keep doing the work, and let the results do the talking. People will say things about you. They'll misunderstand you. They'll create their own stories to fit their comfort. That's just human nature. But what happens when you stop reacting to all of that? When you let your silence and your growth become the proof? The conversation changes. Because people can argue with your words, but they can't argue with your evolution. When you defend yourself constantly, you trap yourself in other people's timelines. You're always waiting for them to see your side, to admit they were wrong, to finally understand. But life doesn't wait for validation. The truth doesn't need applause. You free yourself when you realize you don't need them to get it. The ones meant to understand will see your consistency, not your explanations. It's funny, so many people spend years trying to clear their name when time itself was already working on their behalf. You don't have to force people to see your worth. Keep moving in integrity, and eventually they'll have no choice but to notice. Even if they never say it out loud, they'll feel it. The same people who once doubted you will start to quiet down, not because you defended yourself, but because your growth spoke louder than their gossip. You have to learn to stop chasing closure through explanation. Closure doesn't come from convincing someone, it comes from outgrowing the need to. It comes from realizing that the best response to doubt is peace, and the best revenge against judgment is success. Let your actions show them the difference between who they said you were and who you've become. And here's the thing about results. They don't happen overnight. Silence isn't passive. It's not sitting around waiting for karma to do the work. It's staying focused on your path, choosing peace over panic, discipline over defense. It's building your life so strong that no rumor, no misunderstanding, no opinion can shake it. You don't have to prove you're kind. Just keep showing up with grace. You don't have to prove you're honest. Just keep moving in truth. You don't have to prove you're worthy. Just keep living like you already are. Because eventually, your consistency will make the noise your explanations never could. And when that moment comes, when you look back and realize you never had to fight for people to see your truth, that's peace. That's what happens when you stop defending yourself and start living in alignment. The same silence that once felt painful becomes your strength. The The same misunderstanding that once hurt you becomes the proof of your growth. So let them talk. Let them assume. Let them doubt. You stay steady. You keep building. You let your life become the loudest statement you'll ever make. Your results will say what your words never could. There comes a moment when you realize you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to explain, correct, or prove anything. You simply stop defending yourself, not because you don't care, but because you finally understand the cost of constantly needing to be understood. That's what peaceful detachment looks like. It's not indifference, it's wisdom. It's learning to separate what deserves your energy from what just wants to drain it. The moment you stop defending yourself, you take back control of your emotional space. You stop letting people pull you into their chaos. You stop letting their opinions dictate your peace. Detachment doesn't mean you don't feel, it means you choose what's worth feeling. You begin to see that not every comment needs a response, not every misunderstanding needs clarity, and not every person deserves access to your emotional world. When you reach this point, people might think you've gone numb. They'll say you've changed, that you've stopped caring. But they're wrong. You care deeply. You just don't waste your care on confusion anymore. You've realized that trying to make everyone understand you is like trying to hold water in your hands. No matter how tight you grip, it still slips away. Some things are better left unspoken. Some battles are better left unfought. Peaceful detachment is choosing silence, not because you're powerless, but because you value your energy more than your ego. It's the maturity of saying, I could explain myself right now, I could fight back, but I'd rather keep my peace. That's strength. That's control. It's not about proving who's right. It's about preserving what's right within you. When you stop defending yourself, you give yourself permission to rise above the noise. You begin to understand that other people's opinions are reflections of them, not definitions of you. Their assumptions don't change your truth. Their doubt doesn't weaken your worth. And their misunderstanding doesn't rewrite your story. You can let them talk, let them assume, let them fill the silence with whatever narrative they need, because you no longer need to participate in that story. The freedom that comes with detachment is unmatched. Suddenly, your peace is no longer fragile. You don't get thrown off by every rumor, every opinion, every subtle jab. You see it, you recognize it, and you let it pass. You start to realize that peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the decision not to be moved by it. It's sitting in the middle of chaos and still feeling calm inside. It takes strength to hold your tongue when every part of you wants to explain. It takes discipline to stay silent when you know you could easily defend yourself. But that's what true power looks like: restraint, the ability to choose peace over participation. Because peace is not passive, it's intentional. It's something you protect, moment by moment, choice by choice. Eventually, you'll reach a place where you don't even feel the urge to prove yourself anymore. You won't get caught up in who said what or who thinks what. You'll simply keep living, keep growing, keep being. And that's when you'll notice something beautiful. The quieter you become, the louder your peace gets. The less you react, the more powerful your presence becomes. And that's the real secret. Peace doesn't shout. It doesn't explain. It doesn't defend. It just is. And when you start living from that place, nothing and no one can touch your calm. You've already won the battle that matters most, the one within yourself. The real power is not in defending your peace, but in living so calmly that nothing can disturb it.